That interview from Russell with Dr. Timothy Nelson is coming up in about 15 minutes. And before we move on to our next story, we want to share some of the Keller administration's response to our questions about citizen police oversight. The mayor's spokesperson says his letter to the council was merely a suggestion to, quote, prod, unquote, councilors. Here's part of the statement, quote, APD is almost done with the consent decree, and one of the only items left is the council's CPOA work, so we all just need to get off the dime and see reform through for our community, end quote. You can read the mayor's full response on our website and in this week's New Mexico in Focus newsletter. Now we turn to former New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission Director Norman Gaum, who's back on the show to talk about water planning in the state. Over the past decade, Gaum has worked from outside government, urging lawmakers to fund New Mexico's water agencies and to protect the state's waters. These days, he's president of the group New Mexico Water Advocates, and he talks with Our Land senior producer Laura Paskus about the 2023 Water Security Planning Act, some of the serious problems around the state, and the need for community-driven solutions.
Norm Gaum, welcome back to New Mexico in Focus.
I'm glad to be here, Laura. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So a few months ago, we had Interstate Stream Commission Director Hannah Risley White on the show, and we talked a bit about water planning in New Mexico. I wanted to ask you, how do you feel water planning in New Mexico is going?
Well, first of all, let me say that I think the legislation that passed in 2023, and it passed without a single no vote, not in committee, not on either floor, signed by the governor. It was a state engineer bill, so the agencies support it. It has such potential for New Mexico, but it's complex, and the Interstate Stream Commission and the State Engineer Office are just buried in work. Mm-hmm. They don't have the capacity that we really need them to have, and that's because the legislature has, and the governors, past governors, have actually cut their staff, you know, in this age where we're experiencing water scarcity, we need planning. So the good news is we have a great new law that could be a tipping point, a pivot point, you know, from which progress accelerates. The realities are that it's going to be slow getting off the ground because of capacity limitations, both at the state level and in the regions that have to do the planning.
Yeah, so despite an enormous budget surplus that everybody likes to talk about, are we funding water planning and water agencies?
No, the answer is absolutely not.
I've heard you talk about ongoing water governance issues that require immediate attention or action. What are some of those?
Well, the Ogallala Aquifer, the communities Clovis, Portales, Texaco. I understand Texaco and Portales literally ran out of water this summer. Their wells ran dry. They're getting trickles out of their showers. We've known about that problem for decades in this state, and we have let the status quo go until now. We literally have more wells being drilled. It's a race to the very bottom of the aquifer. And I'm talking about communities that will have no drinking water if we don't change what we're doing now. In the Middle Rio Grande, we have big problems, but they're manageable. But as long as we're not attempting to manage them holistically, they're not going to be managed because no one entity has the formula to fix things. Mm-hmm. International scholars who met at UNM in June concluded that water is a community problem. Research into problems and solutions don't reach the people. They don't reach the legislature. A community problem like water can only be solved can only be addressed through community-driven solutions. That's what planning is all about. It's coming up with community-driven solutions, and that's what our new law provides for. Mm-hmm. And the new solutions can't depend just on the state or just on the water authority or the conservancy district. Because all of those institutions in the Middle Valley have their own missions, and their missions are to take care of their people, not to take care of the water system and the water supply. And so the pieces don't add up to a whole. What the Act says is we have to come together, we have to collaborate, and we have to find solutions to our problems. And to me, it doesn't do any good to talk about the specific problems right now, because that's just going to turn people off. What we have to do is what the Water Security Planning Act tells us to do, which is to self-organize, a collaborative effort where we can work together and find agreed solutions to our problems. And it's not going to be easy. We've got to get started.
There are these problems statewide and issues statewide, but just looking at the Middle Rio Grande Valley, I'm curious what you think. Are we living within our water budget? Are we living within our water budget?
The simple answer is no. The trend has been really negative, just down, down, down for the last decade. Basically, a lot of our water went away, but our uses remained the same. What we did is we transferred from the river, which we were beginning to depend on for drinking water in Albuquerque, back to groundwater. And guess what? The groundwater, remember it was rising? It's started to fall again. But the good news is that we have the ingredients for solution. We in the Middle Valley have over half of the state's people. We have half the state's economy, the diversified economy. We have a thin slice of water to support all of that. We have to figure out how to manage that thin slice by agreement so that it meets our needs. It may not meet all of our wants, but there's enough water to meet our needs.
Mm-hmm. So looking back, you were the Interstate Stream Commission director from 1997 to 2002. Looking back now, what do you wish that maybe you had done differently then?
You know, I have close colleagues that I depend a lot on that counsel me that my constant wishing the past should have been different is really not productive. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't change things. What we have to focus on the future. What do I wish I had done differently? Well, when I was appointed Interstate Stream Commission Director, the crisis of the moment in water was compliance with the Pecos River Compact.
Right.
And through a collaborative process involving the stakeholders, we found an agreed solution. We negotiated it. Everybody agreed. It was passed into law by the legislature in the very next session of the legislature. And you know what? Compact compliance on the Pecos has not been a problem since. Mm-hmm. And it was a crisis every year before that. You know, going back to 1987 when we were served with a decree to never again owe water to Texas. I said at the time that I'm happy to work on this crisis, but the lower Rio Grande is more important. And the middle Rio Grande is most important at all. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't have the bandwidth or time, or my agency didn't have the resources to deal with those issues, the Interstate Stream Commission. They have more resources now, but not enough. So I wish, if anything, what we had done was to set the stage for concentrated attention on the lower Rio Grande and the middle Rio Grande. We prepared a plan. Some of that got into the plan, but guess what? The plans were never funded to be implemented. Mm-hmm. Now, the Pecos River Plan, that was a crisis. It was fully funded by the state. It was implemented. It was a success.
Right.
We need to replicate that in the lower Rio Grande. We most especially need to replicate it here in the middle Rio Grande.
So one of the things that I think about sometimes is people who work in water in New Mexico, or probably anywhere, whether they're in federal or state agencies, like, they genuinely care about water. They're not in it for any other reason except that they care about these issues. But I also feel like a lot of people who work in water in New Mexico know that our problems are far bigger than we publicly acknowledge. And certainly that legislators acknowledge. I'm curious what you might urge these types of employees to consider or to think about in their daily work and in their work for the state.
That's an excellent question, Laura. When I arrived at the ISC, I was told that we shouldn't be too frank about problems when we're talking about problems, because that would be an admission that would be used against us. So the theory was to even talk about a problem was an admission. Right now, there are people in the Office of the State Engineer that are in charge of these big data sets. They can't help what the people who came before them did, but those data sets are in lousy condition and they need to be cleaned up. People need to say that. One of the keys on the Pecos River to our solution was speaking what we called then and what I call now the plain truths. You know, the plain truths in Albuquerque in the 1990s were the aquifer's not working the way we think it should, what's going on, and then later, we can't pump the groundwater as our only means of surface supply because the river water is not making into it. That's a plain truth. The plain truth in the Middle Rio Grande is we're using more water than we are entitled to. The plain truth in the Middle Rio Grande is that nobody is protecting the volume of water that remains in the aquifer. The aquifer is not a protected water supply source in the state except through permits and things that only peripherally get to the problem, and those permits are never revisited. You know, so we have to change our ways dramatically. And the only way we do that is to talk about the problems. Admission or not, we can't solve a problem unless we can name it. Name the problems, talk about them, seek solutions.
Right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. On our website, we'll have resources and information on how people can become involved in water planning. So thank you.
Laura, you do a real public service in New Mexico. Thank you so much.
Thanks.